So let's get into this Draymond stuff, Warriors fans. Listen, do not be a fanboy. Blindly defending Draymond doesn't make you a good fan. He needs to be held accountable. The first question I think we need to ask about what's going on right now with the Warriors is, why is Draymond Green out there with a balky bad knee and a sore ankle? Meanwhile, Kevon Looney has sat out a month with an ankle that he barely turned over. Like, I know every ankle roll is different. I watched it. Come on, man. I've rolled my ankle 25 plus times as an old hooper. That wasn't a bad turnover. He's been out a month. Meanwhile, a guy that's supposedly one of our franchise players is toughing out a knee that's given out on him, a sore ankle. And I had brought it up in the breakdown, right? It kind of reminds me of Brett Favre. Remember, for years and years, Brett Favre had this record of starts as the quarterback for the Packers. He's an Iron Man. But if you watched some of those games, there were games he shouldn't have been out there. And he was actually hurting the team, but he wanted to keep his record alive. And I say that to say that at a certain point, Draymond is hurting the team because he hasn't been himself. It's clear. And so you Draymond apologists, I understand Draymond's chipped up and he probably shouldn't be out there. So it is admirable that he's trying to play through it. But if you watch that game in Charlotte, he didn't close out on anybody outside of, I believe, late in game. For 3 quarters, he wanted nothing to do with closeouts to the perimeter. And that's his body. We all know, I'm never going to question his will or his competitive spirit. His body was like, no, sir, you're not going out and contesting. So we have to ask that question. Why are they making Draymond tough this out? And meanwhile, Looney can't tape his ankle up and give us 20 minutes? I don't understand. Someone explain to me. As far as the ejection goes, look, I'm fine with the first technical. You react, you let out a cuss word, but getting the second one is what's unacceptable. And it really doesn't matter what walk of life or profession Draymond was in. Let's say he worked in Silicon Valley. He still lived in the Bay Area. He was a brilliant programmer. Every time you told him something he really didn't like, he was going to blow up. He was going to blow up on everybody, right? He would be held accountable. You would see him move from one company to the next across Silicon Valley because of his outbursts. And maybe that's not the greatest points, but I didn't want to get accused of saying, God forbid, I said, what if Draymond sold tires? Well, why would a black man sell tires? See, that's what I'm talking about with the internet. So I used a different example. But the point is, whatever profession Draymond is in, this is a major blind spot of his, if you will, and it's unacceptable. He may have a super high basketball IQ, but his emotional IQ needs a lot of work, along with his jump shot. And I'm going to work in a mailbag question here. My guy Savvy, he asked me if it was possible for Draymond to retool his jumper, kind of like Wiseman's, where it's more of a 2-motion shot. No, it's not. At this point, the ship has sailed with Draymond's jumper. I know he hit, 2 threes in Orlando? He hit a late 3 late in Charlotte. That's fine every now and then, but it will never be a consistent weapon like it was, what was it, in 16? That can be a pod in itself to what had happened mentally. I think there was a Kevin Durant effect with that. The shoulder, I don't know, But no, I think for Draymond, what he needs to focus on is becoming a good free throw shooter. If he could get into the upper 70 percentile, 80%, because a lot of the time when you see him get the ball on that short roll and he doesn't want to attack or he's constantly looking for the lob, yes, we know he's a lobaholic. We know he loves to pass more than score, but a lot of the time he shies away from trying to finish because he doesn't want to go to the free throw line, right? So I think that would really help him be more aggressive attacking downhill. And then once he gets downhill, I'd like to see him work on his English off the glass. He needs to learn to play the glass a little bit better. So then, and you're getting some and ones, and it would just, again, make him more confident and aggressive attacking downhill, which in turn would keep the defense more honest. As far as like the perimeter 3-point shooting, like I said, don't waste your time. Just work on your free throws. I think we also need to talk about Steve Kerr here for a second in these 2 losses. I've heard a lot of excuses, and I've heard that he wasn't allowed to challenge this or that. The reality of the situation is, in the final 2 minutes of game, Steve Kerr is pretty much a spectator. Now, I think Steve Kerr is a good motivator and a great leader. I do. But we know he isn't what I like to call a coachy coach, a Brad Stevens or a Steve Clifford we've seen twice now in a week. Those guys got it out the mud. Those guys have reps on reps on reps of endgame situation and the little details that it takes to become a professional coach. It's not Kerr's fault. He won't have that. That wasn't his path. He was never allowed that. And it's not really as much about knowing the X's and O's as much as the details of when and where to use them. And you only really get good at that stuff by trial and error. If you're a coach that worked your way up the ranks, you were in the G League, you were overseas. Nick Nurse's story is crazy, right? Where he was afforded the luxury to try weird things and fail. Kerr's been in the spotlight from day one as a coach. He's had to play it conservatively, and he couldn't get those reps. For instance, did you see where the Charlotte Hornets coach Borrego was? He was at half court when he got that bogus timeout call on the tie-up, right? Meanwhile, Kerr said he was ignored for his timeout when Wanamaker was tied up, right? But Borrego knew he had to be at half court, damn near on the court, so he could get that timeout ASAP, whether it was right or wrong. Those are the details that the coachy coaches know. Another example I'll give you. Late last night in that Clippers game, you heard Jeff Van Gundy mention, hey, they've got to tell Morris if he misses the free throw, they got to foul DeAndre right away, right? Because DeAndre shoots like 47% from the free throw line. But Van Gundy was making the point of, you got to tell Morris ahead of time. You can't wait for the rebound and then scream foul. They have to know what to do ahead of time. And these are the details that, again, the coachy coaches have learned over the years of getting it through the mud, and that's just not who Kerr is as a coach. Anyway, that's my Warrior assessment right now. What do they got? New York tomorrow. The Bigs should be back. As always, if you want my full in-depth Warriors analysis, you know where to get it. My Patreon, every game broken down. We're talking 12, 15 minutes, building a great community there with a lot of good basketball minds, man. A lot of nice takes on there.